Love, according to Buddha, is not a chain that binds, but a light that frees. True love is never an addiction. It is a state of deep understanding and compassion that allows both souls to grow. Addiction is rooted in attachment, a craving that demands possession, attention, or validation from another. But love, in Buddha's philosophy, is selfless and liberating. It does not say, "I need you to be happy," but rather, "I wish for your happiness, even if it is not with me." When love becomes an addiction, it brings suffering because the mind clings to illusions of control, permanence, and dependency. Buddha taught that real love is born from mindfulness, a love that sees things as they are, without grasping or expecting. It is not blind desire, but pure awareness, not control, but acceptance. Such love flows naturally from a heart that has conquered ego and fear. When one practices loving kindness, metta, karuna, and equanimity, upekkha, love transforms from a fragile emotion into a boundless energy that uplifts everyone it touches. The Buddhist teaching reminds us that to love truly, one must first be free within. Only a peaceful mind can give peaceful love. The one who loves without attachment does not suffer loss, for their love is not dependent on conditions. It exists as a gift, not a trade. In this way, love becomes a meditation, not an obsession. It teaches us to see beauty without clinging, to care without fear, and to give without expecting. When we understand this, we realize that love is not meant to fill an emptiness inside us, but to express the fullness of our being. The Buddha's way of love is not emotional intoxication, but inner illumination. It is the gentle reminder that love is sacred only when it is free from the bondage of desire, ego, and control. Thus, love is not an addiction, but the purest expression of enlightenment itself, a state where the heart beats not for possession, but for compassion. When we look deeper into Buddha's philosophy, we understand that love, when mixed with attachment, becomes the seed of suffering. Attachment makes us dependent on others for our emotional survival, and when expectations are not met, pain naturally follows. Buddha taught that the root of all suffering lies in tanha, craving or desire. In relationships, this craving often appears as the need to possess, to control, or to be constantly reassured. But true love does not seek ownership, it seeks understanding. When we love with wisdom, we allow others to be who they truly are, without trying to mold them into what we want. This kind of love is not driven by the fear of losing someone, but by the joy of seeing them flourish. The Buddha's message was clear. The highest form of love is unconditional, born from inner peace rather than emotional dependency. If we are empty inside, we search for someone else to fill that void. But when we are whole within, we give love freely without demanding anything in return. This is the love that liberates, not confines. The Buddha compared this pure love to the radiance of the sun. It shines for all, without discrimination or expectation. When our love becomes like sunlight, it nurtures growth without attachment. This does not mean detachment in the cold sense of indifference, but detachment in the sense of freedom. It means caring deeply, yet not clinging. Giving sincerely, yet not losing oneself. Through mindfulness, meditation, and self-awareness, we learn to observe our emotions and separate love from obsession. We begin to understand that love is not a feeling to be possessed, but a state of being to be cultivated. Buddha's path invites us to turn love into a practice of patience, forgiveness, and compassion. In doing so, we purify our hearts from jealousy, insecurity, and fear. Then, love becomes not a source of anxiety, but a source of peace. It teaches us that we can care deeply for others without becoming enslaved by our emotions. Such love is a reflection of enlightenment itself, calm, steady, and selfless. When we love in this way, every act of kindness, every word of care, and every moment of understanding becomes a step toward awakening. We discover that love, in its truest form, is not an escape from loneliness, but the recognition that we are all connected. In Buddha's wisdom, love is not addiction, it is awareness in motion, a divine energy that heals, transforms, and brings light to all beings.
To truly grasp Buddha's philosophy of love, we must first understand that love begins within ourselves. A person who has not learned to love and accept their own being cannot genuinely love another. Buddha taught that self-love is not selfishness, it is self-awareness. When we cultivate kindness toward ourselves, we develop a heart capable of embracing others with the same compassion. Love that springs from self-awareness is pure, while love born from inner emptiness becomes attachment and dependency. Many people mistake emotional excitement or passion for love, but Buddha pointed out that such emotions are temporary. They rise and fall like waves, and if we cling to them, we are bound to suffer. True love is like the calm depth of the ocean. It is steady, silent, and enduring. It doesn't seek to satisfy the ego, but to dissolve it. Through meditation and mindfulness, one can transform possessive love into unconditional compassion. When we sit in silence and observe our feelings, we begin to see how often our love is tangled with fear. Fear of rejection, fear of loss, fear of loneliness. Buddha's wisdom invites us to let go of these fears and love with an open heart without expecting anything in return. When we do so, love ceases to be an addiction and becomes liberation. It frees both the lover and the beloved. This kind of love is patient, for it understands that everyone is walking their own path. It is forgiving, for it knows that all beings are imperfect and still learning. It is humble, for it expects no reward or recognition. The Buddha's message reminds us that the purpose of love is not to possess happiness through another person, but to share happiness through understanding. When we view love through this lens, relationships become a sacred space for growth, not a battlefield of demands. Instead of saying, "I love you because you make me happy," we begin to say, "I love you because I wish for your peace and freedom." That is the essence of metta, loving kindness. When love is purified of craving, it becomes the most powerful force in the world, capable of healing pain, dissolving anger, and bridging differences. It brings harmony where there is conflict and light where there is darkness. Buddha's philosophy teaches us that to love without attachment is the highest form of spiritual maturity. It is to see others not as extensions of our desire, but as souls walking their own journey. When we learn to love like this, our hearts no longer crave or suffer, they simply shine. And in that shining, we discover the truth that love, in its purest form, is not addiction, but awakening, a sacred reminder of the infinite compassion that resides in every human heart. When Buddha spoke of love, he was not speaking of romance or fleeting emotions, but of a divine energy that connects all living beings. He taught that love must rise above personal desire and become universal compassion. In this higher form, love is not selective. It does not choose one and reject another. It embraces all without boundaries. This is why Buddha's love is often described as metta bhavana, the meditation of loving kindness. Through this practice, one learns to send love first to oneself, then to loved ones, to strangers, and even to those who cause harm. It is an expansion of the heart that dissolves hatred, jealousy, and pride. In contrast, when love becomes an addiction, it narrows our vision. We become attached to one person, one idea, or one outcome, and our happiness becomes dependent on it. Such love is fragile because it stands on the unstable ground of expectation. The moment the other person changes or distances themselves, suffering begins. But Buddha's teaching liberates us from this cycle. He guides us to understand that love is not something to cling to. It is something to radiate. The moment we stop seeking love as an external object and begin to embody it as an inner state, peace arises naturally. This shift transforms our relationships, for we no longer approach others with the mindset of "what can I get?" but "what can I give?" We stop treating love as a transaction and start living it as a way of being. The Buddha's love does not depend on possession or physical closeness. It thrives in freedom and respect. When we love with such purity, we allow others to grow, to make mistakes, and to find their own paths. We do not suffer when they change, because our love is not rooted in control, it is rooted in understanding. This understanding is the essence of wisdom. It allows us to see that everyone, even those who hurt us, is seeking happiness in their own imperfect way. When we cultivate love from this awareness, it becomes limitless. It heals not only our hearts, but also the world around us. The addicted heart says, "I love you because I need you." The awakened heart says, "I love you because you are part of me." That is the difference between bondage and liberation. Buddha's love is fearless because it is grounded in truth, not illusion. It does not waver when circumstances change, for it flows from an inner source that never dries. In the end, Buddha teaches us that the path of true love is the path of enlightenment itself, to love all beings without attachment, to see unity in diversity, and to realize that love, when freed from craving, becomes the very essence of awakening.
Buddha's understanding of love leads us to a profound realization that love and wisdom must walk hand in hand. Love without wisdom becomes attachment, and wisdom without love becomes cold detachment. The Buddha emphasized that a truly awakened heart balances both. When we love wisely, we do not fall into the trap of emotional dependency. Instead, we rise into the realm of understanding. In this awareness, we begin to see love not as something that happens to us, but as something we consciously cultivate. It becomes a practice, a discipline of the heart. Every thought of kindness, every act of forgiveness, every moment of patience strengthens this love within us. Buddha's teachings guide us to observe our desires honestly, to see how often we mistake desire for love. Desire says, "I want you," but love says, "I wish you well." Desire clings, while love frees. When we meditate and look deeply into the nature of our relationships, we discover that what we truly seek is not possession, but connection, a sense of shared humanity, of being one with life itself. This is where the Buddhist concept of universal love unfolds. It extends beyond individuals, beyond species, even beyond time. It is a love that recognizes the interconnectedness of all beings, that we all suffer, hope, and seek peace. To love from this awareness is to participate in the healing of the world. The Buddha did not teach love as a sentiment, but as a force of transformation. It dissolves hatred, softens cruelty, and awakens compassion. When you practice loving kindness, even silently wishing well for others, you begin to purify your own heart. The walls of ego and fear slowly crumble, and what remains is pure presence, a calm joy that asks for nothing. Buddha often reminded his followers that love without attachment is the highest virtue, for it is rooted in freedom. Such love is like a river.
It flows naturally, nurturing all it touches, without claiming ownership of the land it passes through. This love gives, not to receive, but because giving itself is its nature. When we embody this truth, we stop chasing love and start becoming love. We realize that we do not need to be loved to feel complete. We only need to awaken the love already dwelling within us. This realization transforms loneliness into peace, longing into gratitude, and pain into compassion. In the silence of understanding, the Buddha's message becomes clear. Love is not an addiction that drains life. It is the very breath of enlightenment that gives life. To love selflessly is to awaken. To awaken is to love endlessly. And in that boundless state, love ceases to be an emotion. It becomes the eternal fragrance of the awakened soul. In the end, Buddha's philosophy of love reminds us that the greatest journey is not toward another person, but toward the awakening of our own heart. Love in its purest essence is not something to chase, control, or demand. It is something to become. When we reach this realization, we see that love is not a weakness, but the highest strength. Not an emotion that flickers, but a truth that endures. The Buddha's wisdom teaches us that the purpose of love is not to lose ourselves in another, but to find ourselves through understanding and compassion. When love is free from craving, it becomes an act of awareness. Every glance, every word, every silence becomes sacred. Such love does not create bondage, it creates harmony. It doesn't say, "You are mine," but whispers, "We are one." And in that oneness, all fear dissolves, because true love carries no demands, no ownership, no boundaries. It is as vast as the sky, open, endless, and ever-giving. To live in this kind of love is to live in peace. We no longer love out of loneliness, but out of fullness. We no longer seek to be completed, for we are already whole. Buddha's message asks us to cultivate this love every day through mindfulness, kindness, patience, and forgiveness. When we practice loving kindness, we become the very source of the love we once sought. We begin to see beauty in everything. Even in pain, we find lessons. Even in loss, we find gratitude. The addicted heart clings and suffers, but the awakened heart gives and rejoices. That is the great transformation the Buddha spoke of, when love evolves from desire into wisdom, from attachment into liberation. The world today, filled with restlessness and longing, needs this understanding more than ever. We are surrounded by illusions of love, superficial connections that promise joy but deliver emptiness. Buddha's teaching breaks this illusion and brings us back to the essence, that love is not taking, it is giving, not control, but care, not passion, but presence. When we love without chains, we not only free others, we free ourselves. We stop depending on others for our happiness, and our hearts become tranquil, steady, and radiant. In that stillness, we finally experience the pure joy of existence, a joy that does not fade because it is rooted in truth. Love then becomes a meditation, a quiet offering of compassion to all beings, including ourselves. This is the love that transcends time, distance, and death, the eternal love that Buddha realized beneath the Bodhi tree. And so, as we walk this path, may we remember, love is not an addiction that binds the soul, but the light that awakens it. To love freely, selflessly, and wisely, that is the Buddha's way, the path to peace, and the heart of enlightenment itself.